Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're going to make this ground cover material, and it's got a bunch of things going on. We can change the actual ground cover patterns. So we've got three different things going on here. We can change the size. Oh, sorry, that's the hue. We can also do that. And we've got three separate layers here. So we've got the ground cover, so this leafy stuff on top. Then we've got the leaf litter, which is this second layer underneath here. It's pretty funky. And then we've got a mulch layer. And so I've left these hues, I let the sliders go all the way here because we can get some real cartoony effects. But I'll also show you how to limit it in the lesson that we actually do, so that your end users, if you want to keep it to, just realistic colors, we can do that too. And then finally, the other thing that we can do is we can adjust the size of those leafy bits on top. So we can get them bigger and we can get them smaller. So this material is actually, it's a versatile material, and you can, when you do this at home, I'm going to teach you some techniques here, but you can actually get it to be much, much more complicated. And you can get some real versatility in the various iterations that you can have the one substance produce. The other thing that's going to be a little bit different about this material is that very little of this is actually driven by noises made in substance. This is mostly done with stuff that I've made in Photoshop. So I've got these grayscale maps, which we're going to start by building those. And then we plug them into the stuff that we usually use. And there's actually very few noises that we use. I mean, I'm using this and this for like the background in here, but it's all done with these grayscale maps and then lots and lots of gradient maps. So it's actually a very simple material. The secret sauce is going on in here and in the way that we do our colors. And then we're going to use some functions to automatically change colors. So as we flip through our various different types of ground cover here, we're going to, well, I'm going to teach you two things. I mean, we're going to let the end user change colors, but then we're also going to change the lightness using functions only. But, again, when you're making these for yourselves, you can mix and match the two techniques. And you can actually apply the functions to whatever you want in the hue saturation. I'm just going to show you how you can do it, and then you can just, you make it work for whatever it is that you're actually doing. But it's pretty straightforward, and without further ado, let's get into Photoshop and start building our grayscale maps. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. I've created a small image. This is 512 by 512, and we really don't need it any bigger than that. And the trick is, now we have to build three different styles ground cover, and obviously you can make your ground cover look how you want your ground cover to look. I'm going to try to build it using mostly the custom shape tool. And the reason is that this is giving me vector shapes, and that's going to allow me to size them and do all kinds of things to them, manipulate them, warp them, without getting fuzzy or lossy, because they're vectors. If we use rasterized layers to do this stuff, as we stretch and pull it, which we're going to be doing a lot of, it's going to just mess it up. So I'm going to try to stick to using vectors just because it simplifies my life. But you don't have to, again. There is a wide selection of things here. Now, we're going to be doing all kinds of natural stuff, so I don't know what you have in your shape library, but if you click on this gear here, it gives you access to their library. And if you don't have like these nature shapes already in here, you can go ahead and pick them out. Yeah, I think I pretty much got everything I want, but let's say, for example, artistic textures, okay? Now, it's going to ask me, do you want to replace these? And I don't want to replace what I've got. I'm going to go ahead and append it, and that's just going to add it to the bottom of the list. If you don't have any of these art, if you don't have these particular shapes that we're using in here, that's how you can add them to your library. I think I'm using nature shapes, and we've got artistic textures, and I think that's it. I've had them in here for a while, so I honestly don't remember. But fool around with it and you'll find what you like. Now, we're going to create 3 different things. And if we come back and look in here, I've got these are my leaf litter, what I'm calling my leaf litter, and this is what I'm calling my ground cover. And the way I'm conceptualizing it is that the stuff in this layer is kind of like the fallen leaves from this layer. So I'm trying to keep the shapes more or less the same. But again, you can do whatever you want. But I'm going to keep them kind of logically together, and I'm going to work them in pairs. So let's start with the grassier one. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to pick out something grassy, like perhaps this. And then I can drag it. Now, if I hold down the shift, it's going to keep my proportions. If I don't, I can move it and stretch it. And now it's given me this vaguely grassy kind of thing. Now, I'm making a grayscale map that I'm going to use both for my color and for my height. So I've got to kind of keep 2 balls up in the air at the same time here. I'm going to try to create, the lighter something is, the higher it is as far as the height map's concerned. But then I'm going to use a gradient map to get my colors done. So as far as my colors, I'm just making sure that my color zones are all different shades of gray. And, that gradient map can get pretty precise. So they can be subtle changes. And what this allows me to do then is to kind of try to use the lighter colors where I want things higher, use the darker colors where I want things lower, and at the same time, within those basic parameters, have different shades of gray that are going to give me my colors. So let's say I have a bunch of darker grays, and I kind of have, like 2 or 3 of the darker ones, and then 2 or 3 of the lighter ones, and that's going to give me a lot of color variation in what I'm doing. So let's start with our ground cover grass. I'm going to lay out a bunch of these, and let's first make a copy. And I'm going to kind of go for, like a tuft of grass. So I'm thinking about it conceptually from looking at it top down as if I'm making a height map right now. And for the moment, I'm just laying out my shapes. I'm not really worrying about variety. All right, so I've got these guys as a separate shape. Now, I can come in here and I can start transforming these. So I particularly like warp because it lets me really start getting these to be more individual looking. And I just want to make sure that I keep that edge free. We're going to center it at the end. So I'm trying to take up a goodly portion of this because it's, easier to make it smaller, and this way we've got as big an image as we can handle. All right, so we've got our first quote-unquote layer going on here. I'm not going to combine these yet. What I want to do is start changing their color a little bit now. So I can just give them some variety. I'm not worried about doing the height yet. Right now, I'm just concerned about, making these, each one of them is like slightly different as far as the gray goes. So I'm double clicking on the thumbnail, and I'm just assigning different grayscale values here. All right, so, if we ran this through a gradient map and we got our little gradient map sliders in Substance going, we could actually have 3 separate colors for these because each one is a slightly different shade of gray. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on the layer, and I want to give this some 3-dimensionality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get an inner glow. I'm going to double click on that inner glow, and let's get that to be white. Yeah, let's put it in the center. It's kind of hard to see. I should have done it on one of the darker ones. I'm just going to move this over to this guy. because it lets me see what's going on a little bit better. So I'm trying to get this edge to drop off a little bit. So I'm double clicking on my inner glow. So this way, when we're doing colors and heights, it's gonna be a little bit higher up here than it is along the edges, and it's gonna make it a little bit curved. So that works for that color. I'm holding down the Alt key, and I'm just gonna copy that same effect onto this guy here. And this is very light. I think I'm gonna go on the edge here, on the wrong one. I want it to be on this one. So let's go on the edge on this one and then darken this up. And we can take the same effect here. Again, I'm holding down the Alt key. So which one? I'm on this one now. I'm going to double click on that inner glow. I want to use the edge again here, and that means we're going to darken up this color. You can also choke it up a little bit. All right, so we've got this thing. It's looking a little bit more curvy. It's not quite so flat anymore. At this point, I am going to hold down the Alt key. I'm going to make a bunch of copies here. I'm going to come back to my original crew, and I am going to convert them to a smart object. And what a smart object is I guess it's kind of a vector. It's going to remember what the pixel information is. So as I go and resize this and squish this and doing all kinds of things with it, if it was a regular rasterized layer, if I'd made it small like this, right? And then you make it big again, it's gonna lose that information. Not if it's a smart object. If it's a smart object, it's gonna remember all that information, and you can fool around with stuff, and you don't have to worry about things getting fuzzy and pixelated. The other thing I can do with it is I can adjust, I can do all the same things with it that I would do with a rasterized layer. And this is letting me save myself a bunch of work, because I've got this basic template down of, the shapes that we made, and I can just keep using my original shapes. So this second version we can have slightly different. And maybe flip it. So we're continuing to get more variety with the least amount of actual work involved in doing it. And we're going to repeat. I'm going to just make a bunch of new shapes for myself. Take my old shapes and turn them into a single thing, just so it's easier to manage. Again, I can start fooling around with it, start filling in some spaces. These are getting distracting for me. I'm going to put them in a folder, and I'm just going to shut that off, so I can look at what I'm building as I'm building it. All right, we can make another copy of that. And we can also start doing things to it here. So, and again, now I'm thinking about my heights. So I want to make this one a little bit lighter than the one underneath it. I'll turn this one back on, and then we can make this one a little bit darker. All right, so I'm liking this tuft so far. I'm going to keep these separate because we may want to adjust them once we start looking in substance. The other thing I want to add before we start looking at it in there, though, is in this middle part, that's where I want my tallest thing to be. I want it, to look like a lump. So, I'm trying to get it a little bit darker on the edges and a little bit lighter on top. But for that, I think I'm going to get a different shape. I want something more star-like. So maybe this guy. Yeah, I think that'll work. We'll get some inner glow happening there. No, let's do it the other way. All right, and we're going to kind of do the same idea here. I think I want like a little cone shaped. Yeah, it's pretty good. And I think I'm going to just finally make one more layer here, and I'm going to use a circular marquee cover that little black dot there and maybe feather it out just a bit. And I'm just going to fill it with white. Yeah, I think that's going to work for us. So that's going to be the first tuft. Before we totally commit to it, I'm going to put it in a group and I'm going to call it tuft 1. And let's make leaf litter for that tuft before we go into substance, just to save some time. So we can turn that off. Now we've still got these guys, right? So we don't have to go through all of this again to make the leaf litter. We can just go ahead and use these. And they will be related because they are basically the same shape. So now, instead of making a grass tuft, we're just trying to make the, the stuff that's kind of lying, the dead leaves that are lying around. All right, so again, we're just going to repeat the process. I kind of like that configuration. I'll copy them out, and I will turn these guys into a smart object. And I'm kind of going for a cross-hatching effect, I guess. I don't know. I think maybe a little bit more on top. Not even all of them. Okay, I'm going to get rid of these guys. And I'm going to just make a copy of this one because I like this one. Yeah, I'm cool with that. Going to make sure those edges are empty. So I'm just going to grab up everything now and just scale it a bit. All right. Let's save these out and see what they look like in Substance. Call this, no, this isn't the tufts, this is the litter. And I'm going to save it as a PNG. That's all the other stuff I was doing. I'll put that in a folder. We'll call this Groundcover 1. And then we'll save this guy. Okay. Let's make a new substance. We'll call this Groundcover. I'm going to use the regular PBR template. And I'm not going to use a metallic. So we're going to take this metallic and we're going to turn it into an ambient occlusion. And we'll relabel it. And we'll move them around to how I like them. Okay. I'm going to come into my Explorer. I'm going to go into my actual package. And I'm going to link those 2 bitmaps that I made. And they're going to show up here in my resources. Might as well just save this guy. And then I'm going to take these 2 guys and I'm going to drag them out here. And first thing I'm going to do is convert them to grayscales. Now, before we go doing our effects map, I just kind of want to see whether I like what I'm making. So I'm just going to look at them straight like this. Let's get a height to normal. And we'll get a gradient map. Oh, did not mean to do that. We're going to need to put a white in that ambient occlusion for now. And I'm going to hit View Outputs in 3D View so that AO is now getting rendered out in here. Our normal and our gradient map. So let's get the colors for our leaf litter. I'm going into my gradient editor and I'm going to make me some colors. Actually, I want to keep that background black, so I'm going to put a black in there. Now, as I'm sliding this slider up slowly, I can see where it's covering. So right now what I'm doing is finding my color zones. So I think there's one. And I can double check all of this by actually bringing these gradients super close. And as I do that and move them up, it's actually showing me exactly where on the gradient I am. So that's one color zone. Now I can come in here, put another point in there, and then have a little gradient in there. And now I can start taking these 2 guys up, and this is going to show me where my next sort of color area is. So like right here. Now these lines right here you can see are very sharp, and that's because I've got these 2 close together, but it does give me a very good idea of where exactly I am. So again, if I put another point in here, now I can find a completely different color. So I now have like, you know, I'm starting to get some variety in here. And again, up the scale we go. So I think right about in here, I'm going to move this guy down. I'm going to copy that color, and I'm going to put another point in there. I want to keep these, you know, kind of on the yellow side because, you know, it is kind of leaf litter. I'm going to copy that one. I'm going to paste it here, and then I'm going to get rid of this point. I wasn't happy that this gradient, this line was too sharp, but what I think I'm going to do now is get this guy to go darker. Well, I think that's good enough for the purposes of this lesson anyway. Not quite. I want this, I don't like this middle one here. That's better. Okay, so that's one done. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to make a duplicate of it because I want these colors related. And now let's take a look at our tuft. So I want them related, but I do want it greener because it's, you know, live or grass. So I'm double clicking on that point. That's going to open up my gradient editor for me. I can start with this up here. I think get it to go greener and maybe lighter. I think that's all right. Okay, so we have a gradient map for our leaf litter, and we have a gradient map for our tufts. And we're going to use these same gradient maps for all three versions, and then we're going to adjust the color using hue, saturation, and lightness. Just take a quick look to see how that slides through. Sometimes you get weird colors. Yeah, I think that's pretty nice. What we're going to do, unlike the test, we are going to limit. I'm not going to let it go like all the way out to like weird stuff. You can if you want, but I'm going to show you how to set a limit on it so it'll just stick to this middle bit, so it'll stick to the various greens and yellows. But we'll do that a little bit later. Yeah, that looks nice when it slides through. Okay, yeah, because sometimes you just go like weird colors, and it's easier to check it now than it is to like go face palming later because you got to redo the whole thing. Okay, so we've got our colors sorted out, and we have the first of our leaf maps sorted out. And now we're just going to go back to Photoshop and make a couple more. Okay, so we're back in Photoshop, and we need to make some more stuff. I'm going to make another folder. We're going to turn this guy off, find some more shapes. I like this. And we're just going to do the same thing, except this time I'm going to do the layer style first so I don't have to keep repeating it. That's pretty good. That's even better. Yeah, I mean that that edge gradient stays constant, so as I made it bigger, it just gave me more white. Once we apply it and turn it into a smart object, that ratio is going to stay the same. I just want to have a little bit more brightness up in there. Okay. So we've got our first example, and in fact, I think what I'm going to do is turn it into a smart object now. And now we're basically going to be repeating what we did the last time, just starting to mess things up, starting to make them look different. I turn those off, they're getting a bit distracting. I'm going to copy these two guys, and I'm going to merge them together. I was just thinking that shape looks kind of boring. I'm going to try to kind of like create little semi-tufts up in here, so it's like more than just one round thing. And we're going to bring those up a little bit. And maybe make another one of those and change its size. Yeah, I think that's better. And maybe use these guys underneath this hot mess that we just made to kind of fill it out a little bit. That's probably okay. So I'm going to lump all those guys into a group before we commit to that. And we'll call this tuft. And we can use the same stuff to make our leaf litter. Oh, we put them on the bottom. Hold on a second. Okay, so this group here, I'm going to hit Alt, and I'm going to copy them up to here. And we can turn this off. We can start moving these guys around. Okay. Oh wait, we've got to take care of those edges, but otherwise I'm happy with it. Okay, so let's save these two out. And let's see what they look like. So I'm going to right-click, link, bitmap. And we'll go through the same process. This should work straight out of the box if we've done it right. This is really a question of double checking. So this is my litter, and that's my tuft. Yep. I mean, we could get more persnickety with the gradient map, but we're spending enough time. I mean, this is all going to be different for you, so there's no point in me spending hours and hours doing these colors, which is something that I do quite often. Let's just build this thing, and then you can tweak your colors on your own time. Right, so we have one more left to go. I'm going to come back into Photoshop. We can go ahead and turn these off. We'll make another group. And let's find another shape. This is a good one. So have something kind of leafy. And what we can do with this one is actually combine a couple of shapes here. So let's get our underlying shape done. We will apply our inner glow. So that's pretty good for that. And then we can maybe use this grass thing again. And I think for this one, maybe an outer glow. It's kind of skinny. So that would kind of give us a little bit of a ridged effect in the middle there. I'm holding down the control key and skew those a little bit. And then we'll just start doing what we've been doing before. All right, so now we have these two basic separate elements to this thing, and we can start building our ground cover. You know what? I'm going to put them in a group. No, that's a pain in the butt. You know, I'm going to convert them to a single thing. Okay, and finally, I want to cover up those dark spots on there, so we're going to get another shape for the flower middles. I'm going to convert that to a smart object, and I'm going to adjust the hue. Okay, so the the litter group, actually, we don't really need this group. Okay. We're going to make another group here for the litter. The thing is, we're going to have to find another shape because this is kind of like that flower shape, and I was kind of looking at a bunch of different shapes. And I'm thinking maybe just a regular leaf shape will do, because I think it's going to make for a better litter for this. And let's give it its inner glow. And maybe jazz it up just a bit. We can go back and use this guy probably. Okay, we're going to darken that color just a bit. I want to see whether I can't do something about this point right here. I bet you I can just delete that point. Yeah, I think that'll make a good leaf litter shape. I'm going to convert these guys to a smart object. And we can start making some leaf litter. Wanting to turn it and it's not turning. I'm thinking I want a little more variety in here. I'm going to find some other shapes too. We're going to hang on to what we have. So maybe add a couple more of these. To be honest, I'm not so sure about this one. I'm hoping it'll work. Let's see how it looks. Okay, so we're back in here. Let's link those last two bitmaps and then we can actually start building our material. You know what? It'll do for terms of this lesson. I think this is the only one I'm not truly happy with, but since I know yours look completely different, I'm just going to call that a day.